Hi, I'm Steve Klebeck with Force America. The next menu that we're going to get into is going to be our calibration menu. So now I'm going to go back and then we'll do calibration menu. So I'm just going to basically hit calibration menu, and now it says enter access code. I have a key fob that's called a supervisor key that I'm going to pull out here, and it's a red key because I don't know what the access code is on all the MnDOT trucks. So I'm going to bypass your access code and use a supervisor key, and I'm going to hold it on this key fob, and this screen will change. Okay, now I'm in to the calibration mode, and obviously we don't want everybody in there. There's only be a few people that'll be calibrating the truck, but the calibration mode is a never lost menu. So it'll tell you that you're in the calibration menu, and then it tells you you're in configuration, and you can see the drop down box. I can go down to ground speed, and then it'll drop down box for ground speed. Auger conveyor. I'm just going to go through here and show you all the different things that it can do. So you can see there's a lot of items that we go through. The last one is setting management, shutdown, joysticks, alarms, event logging. Event logging is part of your AVL system. Date and time. If the date and time got off, I would change it. CAN device. That's something in our valve modules. Versions of software. Changing the software. Input outputs is the wires coming out of the core module. I could turn them on. Tow plow. That's where I would activate the tow plow. If it's gray, like direct liquid is gray, that means that this truck is not set up to do direct liquid or anti-icing. It's not enabled, so it's gray. It can't even get into it. Pre-wet materials, there's 10 there. Basically, you do gravity, so it doesn't really matter. There's pre-wet setup. Directional spinner you can't use. Spinner, granule materials, auger conveyor, ground speed, and then back up to configuration. So those are all the different menus, and now I'm going to go through the menus. I'm actually going to turn things on, enable things to help calibrate my truck. So this is a brand new truck, nothing's been done to it. So I'm going to take the navigation stick and I'm going to go into configuration. And it says access code. So if I press that, I could actually put in an access code. I'm just going to leave it because I'm not sure what the code is. Vehicle name, 212580. So this truck is 212580. Measurement units. I've got choices, English or metric. Well, we're going to leave it English. We sell these units in Canada, so we have metric. Valve frequency, 50 hertz. All that tells me is that's our hydraulic valve. The Adafruit valve has a 50 hertz coil. So some of this stuff is defaulted. You don't have to do anything with it. This next line says PWM mode. That's the type of signal we're sending to our hydraulic valve. It's called the pulse with modulation signal, and we just leave that at normal. Okay, now let's go down. It says enable options. Let's go into here. So we're going to enable some options. Granules enabled, right, because we want to spread material. Direct is disabled because we're not doing anti-icing with this truck. If we were, we enable it. Simultaneous granule direct, we're not going to do that. Pre-wet's enabled because we are doing pre-wet. Tow plow is enabled because there is a tow plow on this truck, so that's enabled. Temp sensor is disabled because you're reading the temp sensor through your AVL screen instead of the Salter screen, so that's disabled. Directional spinner is grayed out. You can't use that. Sim speed. I'm going to enable sim speed because that's a process I'm going to use to calibrate the truck. I'm actually going to go into sim speed and simulate a speed to do a verification after I weigh the material. Okay, so right now I don't even need the truck running. All I need is ignition on, and I'm turning things on and off. Distance measurement tool. It's disabled, but for some reason, if you ever wanted to use this truck, it has a built-in foot meter. So you could enable it, and it would keep track of your feet as you're driving down the road. I'm going to leave that disabled for now because I don't think you need it. Auxiliary power. That's another feature that we have built in the 6100 to run maybe something in the summertime where you want to run a crash continuator or a hydraulic tool off the auger circuit. So you could enable that and it would only let you send hydraulic oil to the auger quick coupler, and you could adjust the flow. It would never turn on the spinner, which is a nice feature, because if you're in manual mode and you're using that and the spinner is at 1 or 2 and there's nothing hooked up to it, you're going to deadhead the hydraulic system. So auxiliary power is a feature that we have to run just the auger circuit for summer use or auxiliary use. So if you want to enable it, it's as simple as enabling it like that, and then it would come up on your screen in the main menu. So we'll disable it for now, leave it disabled. Event logging, AVL, that's enabled because that's the system that you're using to track your trucks and the materials. Driver ID is disabled. It's just another feature that we have. We have these black key fobs that look like this here. And what those do is they let you identify what driver is driving the vehicle. So the black key fob would be a key fob like that. And if I had that activated, when I turn on the spreader control, I'd have to put my black key on the key fob, and it would tell me who's driving the truck. So that's not enabled. We're not using that today in your case. And that's it. So I don't scroll down anymore. So I just enabled some options is all I did. Now I'm going to go down and protect current data. That's disabled. And the reason that's disabled is that allows the driver to clear his current totals of material. If that was enabled, then he'd have to have a code every time. So it doesn't let him clear seasonal. The only way you can clear your seasonal totals is with a code. So we'll leave that enabled. Clear current code, we don't need that. So that's it. So basically I just finished what we call the configuration menu. So that menu is done. All I did was turn things on and off. My next menu for calibration would be ground speed, which means I have to drive the truck because I want to match the ground speed of the truck with the salter control. So if I go into ground speed, it's going to have some items there that I have to answer. Speedometer type is electronic or mechanical. We want mechanical. The pickup sensitivity is high. We leave that. So this axle pulses. When you get these trucks, Central Shop has already set these. I see it's 30,027 pulses per mile. So they all would probably be for the single axle trucks. I would take it they'd all be the same. But if you wanted to check it, you would go to this axle pulses per mile, and then you would press the navigation stick down. And then the word AutoCal comes up on the screen. Okay, so if I hit AutoCal, which I'm going to, it's actually going to tell me on the screen how to do it. It's going to say AutoCal will calibrate your axle pulses determined by the number of axle pulses generated in a mile. You will need to drive the vehicle exactly 1 mile in order to complete the AutoCal. Drive the vehicle to the location where the calibration will take place, such as a mile marker, then press next to continue. So let's pretend we drive the truck to a mile marker. I hit next, and this is a safe way of doing it because I don't need 2 people. Basically I hit the green button again, I hit start tracking, and I drive for exactly a mile, and then I stop it, and then I hit next, and it'll actually put in my axle pulses per lane mile for me. In this case, I'm going to cancel it because it's already in there. So it brought up 30,027 axles, pulses of axles in a mile. So that's how you would, it's simple as that as far as calibrating your ground speed. This jump start speed is set at 15 miles an hour. What that is, it's a true jump start. So as you take off from a dead stop, it actually thinks that you're going like 15 miles an hour, and it gets the auger and the spinner turning right away, so we don't have that delay in reaction there. So that's adjustable too. 15 is our default number, but that's an adjustable setting called the jump start speed. The next one is overspeed alarm, and that's right now currently off. But if you turn that on, you could have set the speed, and it would just give you an alarm to tell you to slow down because we don't want you spreading at maybe 50 or 45 miles an hour. So it's just a speed alarm for spreading. So that's basically all that's in the ground speed menu. So now really is the auger conveyor menu. And this is the menu that we use to to actually what I call hydraulic min and hydraulic max our auger valve, and get it ready for calibration setting, because I need to do that to make an accurate calibration. So I'm going to go into this menu, and the first thing says is what loop mode do you guys run it in? Well, you have some options, but it's closed loop because you actually have a device that's backed by the auger, and it's a 128 pulse sensor, and every time the auger turns, it generates a pulse, and we create the pulse to an auger RPM, and it keeps track of the auger RPMs, and that's how we keep track of accuracy when you're putting out your pounds per revolution and pounds per lane mile driving down the highway. So if I went into this, it gives me two options: closed loop and open loop. If you remember in the screenshot previously when it defaulted to open loop, that means that I don't have a ground speed, or I don't have a auger feedback sensor. I have a ground speed sensor, but not an auger feedback sensor. So we want it in closed loop because we have an auger feedback sensor. So that one is defaulted to closed loop. This pulses per revolution, it's already set for you at 128. That's the sensor that's backed by the auger. It's 128 pulses per revolution. Okay, so now we're at auger forward. So really right now I'd have to have salt in the back of the truck, and I'd have to have it tipped down, and I would actually go into auger forward, and it shows minimum current, maximum RPM. And these are three things that it's important that we should do before we calibrate a new truck. So basically, if I was to start the truck up and I get into this mode, you're going to see where it says 442 milliamps, output is off, auger RPM is 0, hit the green button to run the output. So if I would push the green button down, I would be running right now, and it would give me an RPM or 0. What I'm trying to do there is I'm trying to min my hydraulics. So it's almost ready to turn the auger, but just basically creeping, or just barely stop. That's called my min. So right here, we're saying that it's 462 milliamps is your min. So I'm going to try to start the truck up and run it once and see. We might lose this screen, but I'll show you how easy it is to get back. So I don't know if I can talk over the motor or not, but we'll try it. I didn't lose the screen, so that's a good thing. So I'm actually going to go back into this screen, and I'm going to turn it on. And right now it says 0 RPMs. I'm going to crank up these milliamps, and see the RPM comes up. I'm at 28 RPM, 29 RPM, 30 RPM. So I'm actually putting material out. I'm actually dumping material back into the scale there. My goal here is to min this so this goes to 0. So right now I'm still at 9 RPM. I want to get this to 0. So I'm changing my milliamps till that goes to 0. And right there, so 472 milliamps, I'm at 0 RPM, so the auger's not turning, but I got 472 milliamps sitting right there ready for the auger. That's called my min. Now my next setting, I'm going to get out of there. My next setting is going to be my max, and this is important because I need to saturate my valve, but I don't need to have more milliamps than I need because that'll affect my calibration. So right now we're saying that at 760 milliamps, that's the maximum I'm going to get, and the hydraulic motor is going to turn 62 RPM. So let's go in there and let's turn it on and bring the RPM up to 1500 or so. And I turn it on, and I'm running at 760 milliamps, and I'm at 56, 58 RPM because I got a load on it now. If I bring these milliamps up, now I'm up to 63, 64. I'm at 1100 milliamps, 1160. So I'm going to bring those milliamps down until that RPM starts to drop. Right now I'm at 63, 64. It's still up. Now I'm at 56, so I dropped. I want to get it back to that number of 65, 66. So there I'm at 64. That's probably close enough. I'm at 850 milliamps. So I shut it off. So what I need to do now is enter in that screen. I need to enter whatever RPM that was. Let's say it was 64. So I've entered 64 RPMs. So I've done my mins, I've done my max, and I've done my RPM. I'm gonna shut the truck off. Well, now it defaulted me out of here. So we'll have to get back to where we were. On the screen it says it's e-stop is cleared. System reactivating to reduce risk of death or injury. Ensure all personnel is clear for the machinery. Press the navigation stick to continue. So I'm pressing the navigation stick to continue. We're low on oil here, so I'm just going to shut that, or low on air. I'm going to get rid of that buzzing. Okay. Okay, so I'm going back to calibration because it kicked me out of there. I'm going to use my red key to get back in because I don't know your code. And I'm going to scroll right back down to where I was. I was right in this screen right here. Auger forward. It says on the screen here, calibration menu, auger conveyor, auger forward. So there's my 472 minimum, my 850 max, and 64 is my max RPM. So that 850 might be a little high. You could probably bring that down a little bit, but we'll leave it for now. Okay, now we should really do the same thing for auger reverse, right? Because forward and reverse, we need to do the same because it's different coils. So right here, it looks like somebody did it already and it's the same. So if I go to auger reverse, it's 478 and 750. You know, 750, the 850, we're talking millions of an amp, million amps, that's not a big difference, and 66 RPM. But I'd want you to do the same thing for auger forward and reverse to get those done. So once you get that process done, you can continue on here. Cross auger, you do not have a cross auger. Closed loop gain is set at 250. That's a factory default number, so just leave that number where it is. Enable options. Let's go into this menu. It says auger reverse. Well, if I had a truck with no auger reverse, I would disable that, right? But this has auger reverse, so it's enabled. Manual mode. MinDOT is letting you into manual mode, so that's enabled. If for some reason you didn't need to get in manual mode, we'd disable it here and it wouldn't come up on the main screen, okay? But we'll leave it enabled. Unload material, I showed you that previously. That's enabled. Clear jam's enabled. Cross auger we don't have. Some of these other things we don't have, so they're just not enabled. Skip mode's not enabled. And that's all it's under the enable mode. Gate mode, you don't have a V-box spreader, so that's none. Blast mode is timed, and yours is 10 seconds. So right here, if you wanted to change it to 5 seconds, here's where I would go in, and I would change this to whatever I wanted to. We'll leave it at 10 seconds. Blast distance, we're not using that. Skip mode, we're not using. And that's basically it for setting your auger mins and your auger max. Now, we haven't done the spinner yet, but we're not calibrating the spinner, we're just calibrating the auger. So the next thing I'm going to do is go down to granule materials. And granule materials is actually the materials that you're going to calibrate. So I'm going to go into granule materials, and you can see it shows 10 different materials that come up on the screen. The 6100 has the capability of doing 10 materials. So in your case, you've picked 5 materials. And you've named them. Material 1 is called salt. And you could change the name here if you wanted to. And then you go down to material 2, that's named sand. You go down to material 3, it's 50-50. Then you go down, and material 4 is must be is SCACl, and then it must be sodium caliber. And then you've also got material 4, which must be mag chloride. I believe that's what it is. Okay, so let's go up to the very first one, which is salt, and let's calibrate salt. What you do is you go down to displacement. And right now it says 4.95 pounds. What that's telling us there is someone's put some numbers in here, and they probably did it at Central Shop. 4.9 pounds means per one revolution of the auger, it's putting out 4.9 pounds of material. To see if that's accurate, what we would do is go into displacement. I'd press the navigation stick down, and it says AutoCal on the screen. Okay, so I would reach over and I would do AutoCal. and then some text is going to come up, and it's actually going to tell me, do you have a portable scale or a truck scale? And right now, portable scale is enabled. So, and it actually tells you on the screen what to do. You know, it basically tells you to put a scale behind the truck, and we're going to weigh the material. So I'm going to press next and see where it says next. I'm going to go into next, and it's going to bring up another screen that says AutoCal material displacement. And this is the screen where actually I'm going to run material into the scale, and I'm going to weigh the material, and it's going to give me, it's going to divide the weight by the turns, and this is going to keep track of the turns. So in order to do that, we're probably going to have to lift the dump body up and put material in the back. So you should bring the RPM up. So we're going to bring the dump body up. Okay, so I've put salt in the back of the hopper, and now I always like to bring the engine up. You can set the cruise if you want, but bring it up to, you know, above 1,000 RPM. So bring it up, make sure you got 1,000 RPM or above. Now I'm going to turn the spreader on, and it's not going to dump material because I've got it 0. I like to run this about 30%. And now it's going to turn it on, and it's going to start dumping material, and it's going to keep track of our turns. Okay, so nothing's happening here. Why is that? Well, I think I know why. I'm going to shut it off. Oh, there it goes. So now it's on, and now it's dumping materials. So I'm at 2 turns. It's dumping material. We'll just let it keep running here. I've got the spinner off, 0%. 30% is a good number to run that auger. We like to run a minimum of 250 pounds of material out to get a good average. I'm up to almost 13 turns of the auger. And every auger, you know, it depends on what type of auger you got. Your pounds per rev could be different, whether it's a 6-inch auger or a 9-inch auger. You got enough material? Let's do 150. We're trying to get about it. We're there? Okay, I'm going to shut it off. Okay, so I know I got 19.4 turns of the auger, and it's going to actually tell me on here, you know, what's the next procedure. It says repeat until at least 200 pounds of material has been displaced, but what do we got for a total? 165. We'll go with 165. So I'm going to go and press next. And I'm going to enter that 165 in here. So there's 165, and if I press next again, it's going to calculate for me the turns by the pounds. Okay, it says AutoCal has determined a value of 8.5 pounds per revolution. Press finish if you would like to use this value. So I'm going to press finish. And now it has entered 8.5 pounds into the material. So I'm going to shut the truck off. Because I shut it off, it defaulted me back to the main screen. I go back into calibration. Sometimes if you're fast enough, you can catch it, but that's okay. It's easy to go back to where we were. We were in salt. We were 8.5. So there's where we were. So right now we've actually weighed the material, and we know that one revolution of the auger is putting 8.5 pounds out per rev is where we're at. So the only other thing that I would do now is I would do a verification test. But before you do that, you might want to do the rest of your materials, right? Because this is just one material, salt. You've got 5 materials in there, so by rights you'd have to weigh all 5 materials to be accurate. Okay, so let's go down to the number of set rates. We've got 10 set rates, and here's where you could go down and set the rates. In your case, you've set them 150, 200, 250, and 50-pound increments up to 650. So if you wanted to change those, here's where you'd change them right here. You could change them to whatever rate you'd want. Okay, and then your blast rate. Here's where you'd go and change your blast rate. And then we're out of that. And then you go down material 2. You'd do the same thing. You'd calibrate the material 2. You'd weigh it. You'd set your blast rates, set your rates 1 through 10. All the way down to your 5 materials is what you would do. So once that's done, you could do a verification test. And I'll show you how to do that. What I would do is I'd get out of the main menu, or the calibration menu, and I'd get back to the main menu. And I'd turn my scroll, and now this sim speed came on. That wasn't there before. I enabled that in calibration. So I'm going to enable sim speed, and you'll see it come up here on the screen. So I'm going to enable sim speed, and then I'm going to set this for 30 miles an hour. Okay, and I'm going to set my rate for, let's say, 150 pounds. So what I would do now is I would start the truck up, and I would actually turn it on and run out. I'd run it for 2 minutes. I'd time myself for 2 minutes with a stopwatch, and I got my rate set at 150 pounds. So I would run it for 2 minutes. I would shut it off, and I'd go back here and weigh it. Well, if it weighed 155 or 149 or something, we're good. Okay, so we just proved that our verification test is accurate with our calibration. But let's just say that it wasn't. Let's say that we did our 2 minutes at 30 miles an hour and it weighed 200 pounds. Well, that's unacceptable. That's 50 pounds over per every mile. So that means, in my mind, that the auger's turning too fast. It's putting out too material. So I don't need to go weigh everything again. What I would do is change my auger pounds per rev. And this gets a little tricky. So you'd think maybe, well, okay, it was at 8.8 pounds per rev. Well, I'm going to lower that. Well, no, you don't want to do that, because if you lower it, that means the auger is going to turn faster in a mile. So if I'm at 200 pounds and I should be 150, I'm actually going to change the number higher. So all I would do is I would go back into calibration, and I would scroll down to where I did this, which is under materials. I'd go to material 1. I'd go under displacement, and where it says 8.5 pounds, I might bring that up to a higher number. Let's say I'm going to try 9 pounds this time. So I'm going to bring it up to 9 pounds. I'm going to bring it up to 9 pounds per rev, and I'm going to do my verification test. I'm going to get out of here, and I'm going to go back to sim speed. It's already at 30 miles an hour. I'm going to start the truck up. I'm going to empty my scale. I'm going to put my stopwatch here, and I'm going to turn it on, and I'm going to run it for 2 minutes, which is going to equal a mile. And after 2 minutes, I'm going to shut it off, and I'm going to reweigh it. Well, now if I'm close to where 150, I'm done. So that's called a verification test. And I would advise you to do that. And even at the beginning of every year, instead of weighing all the material, just do a verification test on your materials and see how close you are, because you might be close enough where you don't have to change anything. Okay, so let's get back into calibration. We were in granule material, so I showed you how to calibrate your different materials. So the next thing is spinner. All spinner does for you is adjust a hydraulic valve for min and max. So when we have the spinner knob at 0, we don't want it to be creeping. So it's the same as we did the auger min and max, except we don't have feedback on the spinner, so you physically would need to look in the mirror and go into spinner min and run your output. So you would basically turn it on and run the spinner until it slows down to 0. So you would change these milliamps is what you would do, is you would change these milliamps until the spinner almost stops. Might just be creeping a little bit. That's your min, okay? Now your max, in my mind, really is up to you. How far do you want to broadcast the salt? 750 milliamps. Right now it's 700 milliamps. That's almost wide open. Our valve was pretty much saturated at about 750, 800 milliamps. So if that's out of control, what you would do is you'd bring those milliamps down, and that affects your max setting. So if you don't think you'd ever spread it that far, why would you have it at 700 milliamps? I would bring it down, maybe to 600, 500. It gives you a better range from 0 than to 10. So that's what you're trying to do there. Is you want to get a better range. So here's where you adjust your spinner. Once that's done, you get out of that menu and you go to spinner 2 because you have a right-hand discharge spinner. Now, the other feature on here is 5-second spinner run-on. That's disabled. All that does, if you enable that, when you come to a stop, it lets the spinner run for 5 seconds to clear off. The auger shuts off right away, but the spinner runs for 5 seconds and it clears off. So we'll leave it disabled because that's how you want it. So, so we did the auger. We did the mins and max in the auger. We did a calibration. We adjusted the spinner. Pre-wet is really for doing a calibration, it's gravity. So the truck should come to you ready to go. I think the districts might set the pre-wet up, but basically, if I go into pre-wet, it needs to, whether it's closed or open or manual, that doesn't matter because it's fixed. So what does matter is this drive type. You need to make sure that this drive type says fixed exhaust. That's what you need to make sure. It gives you option, hydraulic driven, adjustable exhaust, or fixed exhaust. Because you've got a gravity system where all you're doing is putting 12 volts to a valve, you want it to be fixed exhaust. The rest of these items on here, the rest of the items that are in here, disabled, mean nothing. This pulses per rev, min max current, because you don't have a hydraulic driven or electric driven pre-wet pump. So that you can skip. Materials you can skip because it's gravity. You just got one on there and you've named it pre-wet is what you've named it. So it has the capability of doing pre-wet, closed loop, open loop with a hydraulic pump or with electric pump. But you chose not to use that option. Okay, so the only other thing is tow plow. And this is basically, if you had a tow plow, we would actually do a calibration. If you had a spreader on the tow plow, here's where we'd set that up under the tow plow menu. You would pick your pulses per revolution of your sensor, and you do your auger min, your auger max, and you would put your max auger RPM in there. And then you would enable spinners if there were spinners on the tow plow. And then you'd go down and actually do a calibration, same as you would on your truck. So, and if it was pre-wet, you could do the pre-wet. So input outputs, you're not using those at all. So those you don't have to worry about. The next thing we'll do is go back into calibration and go back down and show you some of these other features. Date and time, if you ever had to change that because it was wrong on the screen here, here's where you'd go in and you could change your date and you could change your time, okay? Event logging, basically that's set up for you. That's part of your AVL. We don't really need to do anything other than make sure it says intervals there. Alarms, this is your body up warning, your high filter, low filter bypass, overspeed warning, granular low material, different warnings that we could turn on and could buzz at the operators if we need them to. Joysticks, the joysticks that you have on this ultra control arm are full proportional joysticks, so I can feather with every joystick. If I wanted to go in and slow something down, like the front plow drops too fast, I'd go into joysticks, I'd go to plow down. See how I scroll down to plow down? I'm going to go into it, and it says medium duty cycle and max duty cycle. Well, right now, if I wanted the plow to come down slow, that means I want to change my max milliamps just for the down coil so it doesn't come down. This has already been changed to 55% because our default number is 70%. Anything over 70%, the valve is saturated and it's not going to move any more oil. So if you change it from 70 to down, you will actually slow down the hydraulic function. So it's very easy to pick any cylinder, plow left, plow right, plow down, scraper, and go into it and change the proportionality of the joystick. So everything is done right on screen here. So shutdown mode we don't use, and then we're back to setting management where we were to save the downloads. So that's basically it. We've calibrated the truck. I've gotten out of the screen. Now I've lost all my information up here, but that's easy. I'll just turn back whatever I want back on. Pressure for the scraper. Turn that back on, right there. And I'm back to where I was. So I'll go back to the menu that I wanted to be at. Granule material is where I want to be. The only thing I did notice though is this. I don't know if I want the drivers to see the sim speed on. So you know what? I'm going to go back into calibration. I'm going to shut that off because I don't need it anymore. I'm able to get into calibration because I haven't shut the truck down yet. So I'm going to go into configuration, and I believe I'm going to go under enable options, and there's sim speed right there. So I'm going to scroll down to sim speed, and I'm going to disable it, and I'm going to get back out. And now sim speed will not show up anywhere on here anymore. So, and that's, I don't want the drivers to be in there. So basically I go back to where I was, right there. And that's the menu that I need to be in. And I can shut it down.